How's it going, Star Wars fans? Welcome to my review, recap, and breakdown of the final chapter of the Book of Boba Fett. Now, this episode, right at the top of my little document, I say here, a very action-packed, entertaining episode. Don't get me wrong, I loved a lot of moments in this episode, but overall, I had quite a few issues with it as well. The Book of Boba Fett, if I had to kind of summarize it, and this isn't a retrospective review, but I feel like I just want to say this at the beginning, is that it has post-sequel Star Wars, as with The Mandalorian and whatnot, managed to capture like an essence of the old Star Wars, which as a hardcore Star Wars fan myself, I can't help but adore. It's got so many aspects and elements in it that I can't deny that I really enjoy. But overall, this series has kind of felt like a little bit of a far cry from what we thought it might have been. And again, just a heavily stressed. That's not to say all of it is bad or all of it is terrible or mediocre. It's just a lot of it has just kind of felt like, and it is kind of strange. Like, it dawned upon me last week that, holy crap, Chapter 7, here we are, is the finale, and we've just had 2 Mando episodes with a cameo from Boba, and I know you've heard that a million times before, trust me, I know that you have heard everyone say that, ha ha ha, I'm not here to like dunk on that, I'm just saying, it's been a bit strange, and I know there is the analogies as well, which is kind of useful. It's like, this is kind of just maybe the Book of Boba Fett is like a chapter in between, and you could almost see it as like a Mando Season 2.5, and how in a grander story out there, even like the Bible, if you could liken it to that, there are different books almost, and this is just a book in a larger story of this era of Star Wars that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are telling, I suppose. So I do get all of those things when you take into account that kind of context, but overall, there are other things that I think fans have been talking about, you know, whether that's Boba Fett's demeanor. I both like the kind of rule with respect attitude he's got, but at the same time, even Temuera Morrison, and I don't want to be dunking too heavily into this, and we do need to get on with the review, but I just wanted to kind of just add something here in the beginning, since this is the finale, was thinking that I don't think my character would say these lines, and I'm sure maybe you heard about that interview from a few weeks back. I am abbreviating, but he did say he tried to shove some of his lines off to Ming Na, because he basically, and it's not as extreme as obviously Mark Hamill going into The Last Jedi and all those interviews, but there is something off about some of this, despite all of the Star Wars goodness we've also got out of it at the same time. Now, with me kind of rambling about that out of the way, let's get into the meat of this episode. So, this episode was really entertaining. Obviously, this is the battle of all battles, but some of it just felt somewhat off to me, and we'll get to those parts when we get to it. It's super interesting now, also when we get into the Grogu discussion with what happened after Luke Skywalker gave him that ultimatum. That rubbed some fans up the wrong way, me included, despite how much I loved from that episode. You know, the whole Jedi attachment thing, we'll get into a little bit of that and what that means moving forward, and it was kind of obvious as soon as Mando got the Naboo starfighter with the droid port, what that droid port would be used for. So we pick up with them looking at the aftermath of Garsa Thwip's cantina being absolutely decimated. Mando is saying that Cobb Vanth is raising a garrison for them, but he's not really aware that he's been completely decimated by Cad Bane. But I guess, you know, that, as we find out later, further inspires the people of Freetown to not stand for what the Pike Syndicate could mean if they just stood idly by and let their rule happen with the spice trade. When Cad Bane returned to the mayor and the Pike Syndicate leader dude, we found out that they actually framed the Nikto speed bike gang for killing the Tuscan raiders, and that's actually quite a cool surprise there. By the way, just seeing Cad Bane again, I know there's a lot of discourse about bringing, of course there will be, whenever we bring an animated character, so to speak, in live action, it always will be like, oh, you know, does he look good? Or, you know, oh, I'm sure you've seen on Twitter or Instagram, like, this is how he should look, or how he looks better, or whatever. I'm personally, like, really happy with the demeanor, the way they did him. The only thing I'm a little bit iffy about is the choice they made later on, but we will get to that when we get to that. But this is when the X-Wing arrives, and they kind of fooled me here, because I was like, bro, bro, like when we saw R2 arriving in Droid Lady's port, I do apologize, I always forget her freaking name, but whereas some people find it cheesy, by the way, just a little like side note, I used to agree with that, and I still do, but I kind of like it. She kind of really does fit, and because I've become fairly attached to her, I guess you could say, through The Mandalorian and her, then continuously using her, I think I've just kind of adjusted and really enjoy her character now. I guess for me, it's just kind of added to the Star Wars mess and charm that they're giving us with the Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian. But yeah, I thought they were using Luke Skywalker, because I mean, obviously we know that R2 can navigate the X-Wing, but when obviously when we didn't see Luke pop out that X-Wing, it was just Grogu. That was adorable, but it subverted a bit of my expectations, because I think a lot of us, as a lot of theories were going off at the end of last week's episode, thought there would be some kind of continuation with Luke Skywalker, only due to the fact that maybe there'd be some explanation to Mando about why he's returning him. You know, Mando this episode was like, wait, what are you doing here? He hasn't really got an answer. And I've had a bit of discourse with this through some of my friends, talking about what they're doing with Luke Skywalker, because long story short there, with the end of last episode or my review, if you didn't watch it, or whether you did watch it, just to recap, you know, the whole Jedi attachment thing. It's just like, if you choose Mando, you'll be giving into attachment, which is not the way of the Jedi, forsaking the Jedi way. But it's like, Luke Skywalker, my guy, you're attached to Leia, Han in the original trilogy, you were attached to them, you were attached to your father, so the very reason you went to save and redeem your father was through attachment. I do get it, the other side, because I've been listening to all perspectives, and it is interesting what they're trying to do, and what was given to me in terms of a take is that they're clearly trying to bridge the Luke Skywalker post-Return of the Jedi to the Last Jedi Luke Skywalker, who obviously built, you know, the Academy, went through the years, but then after everything went to shit with Ben, he forsook the old Jedi way, saying it's time for the Jedi to end, because in The Last Jedi, with what Rian Johnson did, I guess Luke, you know, did kind of regurgitate what they did before, and I guess that would mean the whole no attachment thing, but then after what happened in the sequel movies, he was like, yeah, it's wrong, it's all wrong. But like, from what we knew about Luke before The Last Jedi came out, we would have all probably bet that it's not necessarily that he would have trained Jedi with absolutely, yeah, you can have attachments, yeah, you can do this and that. He would have still taught his students that, okay, you can have attachments, but just be very wary about what that could do with the dark side. But now clearly what my issue was, they're just going full swing, like, yeah, I'm gonna do what Yoda did, no attachments, whatever. So it does come across a little bit like, I don't like using the word hypocritical, but like, you know, he does have attachments. So without repeating myself too much there, some people were offering in the comment sections like, oh, I think Grogu's gonna like force levitate both of them, and it's gonna be a little trick, and Luke would have been like, I see what you're doing, and maybe it was like a little bit of a ultimatum to Grogu, but really he wanted to see what he would do, and he would let him have Yoda's lightsaber. But as we saw in this episode, nope. He's like, he chose clearly the mithril chainmail from Lord of the Rings and sent him on his way. It's just like, I mean, I'm glad, because I'm glad we got baby Grogu back, but you know what I'm saying. It's just, there's still a little bit of rough around the edges at the same time, as much as I love seeing a post Return of the Jedi Luke. I guess what they're working with, as what I spoke about with my friends, is that they're trying to tie a bridge to the sequels. And it's just kind of like, look, whether you're a sequel fan or not, it's just like, yeah, thanks, sequels. You could have just not done Luke that way, and maybe this wouldn't have been, you know... Either way, we're moving on. We're not getting into the politics of the whole Last Jedi crap. By the way, when Grogu went, Badoo, I totally forgot about that, and how much I loved him saying that. I missed the... Badoo. Back with Mando and everything, we had Fennec Shand sort of explaining what's going on. I did feel like the dialogue was a bit weird here. It was one of those like really transparent moments where one of the characters is telling two of the characters who was already really aware of this information what's going on. For example, like, because we have a truce, you know, they won't interfere and things like that, or they're going to remain neutral. She was just regurgitating stuff that those characters already knew, and technically we already know, but just for the sake of it, hey, if you forgot. And it's just, it's not necessary. It's just, but I suppose at the same time it was running through the plan, because they did add bits to it, but some of it I felt like could have been a bit cut out. So ultimately they stationed their crew at various different parts to really strategically plan for the outnumbering kind of pike attack that was incoming. It was pretty badass seeing Cad Bane arrive and Boba come out, and it was like kind of like ex-bounty hunter, or for the sake of just what I'm saying, bounty hunter meeting bounty hunter in the Western style, and obviously they have a bit of a history, so it's just pretty cool. cool when we just see moments like this in live action, and whether you've soaked up some of the animated stuff or not, if you can bring that context into it, it makes it a little bit shinier, especially some of the dialogue much later on where he's like, I've known you a long time, Boba. Or Boba saying, don't toy with me, I'm no longer a little boy anymore. Things like that. It's just like, hey, yeah, I know their history kind of thing. I mean, that doesn't make it inherently good. I'm just saying it's cool if you know. If you know, you know kind of thing. And obviously, these characters do have history, but if you're going into it brand new, then I suppose it just depends on how cool you find this moment in of itself. In this moment, though, Cad Bane really wanted to somewhat dunk on Boba, and he revealed that the Tuscans were murdered by the Pike Syndicate and not the Nikto bike speeder bike gang. That treaty between families of Mos Espa, staying out of it. Nope, the treaty's gone. Like, they completely stabbed him in the back. Yeah, we all saw that coming. I felt really bad for the Gamorreans who fell off the cliff, because those guys were just like, you know, they've been there since the, well, not kind of since the beginning, but you know what I mean. They were good Gamorreans. Meanwhile, Fennec is somewhat from here on out of the episode, other than like when she helped the modified people from getting their asses handed to them, which was awesome. I love Ming Na. She's just incredible. One of the best things from this Boba Fett series isn't Boba Fett himself. It is Master Assassin Fennec Shand. They've probably done the best things with her, if I'm really being honest here. I'm not gonna lie, the mayor's right-hand man, dude, like, at this point, he was just kind of irritating me. Like, later on, where he was negotiating, I kind of hoped that Pike Syndicate guy would just blow him back. Now, one of the things I wanted to tackle, which I feel like this series has really failed to do, which is a shame because they really use it as a bit of fuel for Boba's character, and this is obviously inherently a problem if you agree with me here, in that we had that moment between Boba and Mando, and I love their interactions, by the way. They're looking pretty screwed in this moment, and Boba says to him that I suppose you'll be heading out, and Mando's just like, I'm not, and he's like, well, you should, and it's like, it's against the creed, and then Boba's like, you really buy into that bantha fodder. So kind of like, just a side note here, that even Boba is technically a Mando through his father's chain code and stuff or whatever. He even thinks, just like a lot of other Mandalorians like Bo-Katan and whatnot, that all of this zealoty creed stuff is a lot of bantha fodder. But to get to the root of this, Mando proposes a couple of different options. You know, maybe we can launch a siege on their terms, you know, which will basically get them killed, but hey, we could still do that. Taken by surprise by just charging out there, but also it could lead them to an opportunity to get back to the palace and escape. But Boba is like, you know, I can't abandon Mos Espa. These people are counting on me. And the thing that I feel like they failed to do is that I get that Boba has hung out on Tatooine for a while, and he came back after the Mando Season 2, after Jabba and Bib Fortuna, and he wanted to take the palace. But that wasn't the only time they said it in this episode. Like, there was many times where he's just like, these people are relying on me, and things like that. It's just like, I don't get it. It's just, I know he wants to rule, and I can understand that, and I can agree with that. But they seem to be adding this somewhat weight that he's got under his belt, that he feels like there's some kind of connection to these people. They're relying on me and things like that, when I don't feel like we've seen that. I don't feel the weight behind that, because there isn't really much context behind that. Whenever they've gone in the streets of Mos Espa, sure, people have given him some looks and stuff, but if anything, they kind of doubted him, because obviously they're used to huts and stuff, but, you know, they weren't exactly smiling at Boba as he came through, so there wasn't really many scenes where, if anything, the people were getting irritated with him. Like, I know that old guy who was selling water at like a really ridiculous credit price was an asshole, but you get what I'm saying. I don't feel, without rambling for too much longer, that the whole motivation for Boba's loyalty to this place, other than him wanting to rule, they insert the lines of that the people are relying on him and stuff like that, but there is no gravity to that to me. I don't feel like the series has at all done that, and they could have maybe have done that a bit more if we didn't get some Mandalorian episodes. Not that I'm complaining, by the way, because I've freaking loved a lot of the content we got in those episodes, but I trust you get what I'm saying. I feel like this series, as much as I praise it for its Star Wars essence post-sequels with what, as I keep saying, Filoni and Favreau have achieved, doesn't mean it's the best written series and things like that. Quite the opposite, in fact, if I'm being really transparent. And I feel like things like this is an example of that, and also it's a very important example when it comes to just adding in to a character's motivations, and especially if you're going to use lines about how Boba won't abandon Mos Espa when it doesn't feel like Mos Espa is anything but a throne to him. Yet you're giving us lines where it's meant to be important, but I don't believe it. Either way, ladies and gentlemen, this is where all the shit goes down, and another thing that I'm not trying to knock for knocking's sake. But this was awesome, seeing the jetpacks, Mando and Boba just going ham. But why is this basically the first time we're seeing jetpack action for Boba Fett? Normally, if you said to anyone on the street who half knew Star Wars, you'd be like, okay, what do you expect to have a Boba Fett series? They'd be like, oh, maybe a bit of a jetpack action, you know, because he's a bounty hunter. It's like second nature, isn't it, to use his jetpack? And I say basically because, yes, a couple of episodes back, after the modified gang did that kind of crappy race through the streets, and I say crappy, but I think most people agree with me there. He kind of just came down at the very end. So technically, in brackets, he has used the jetpack, but yeah. And I argue in that episode in my review, I said you could have shown him flying and scouting over that chase scene, but you see what I mean? Why? Oh, why is this the first time? Yes, basically the first time we are seeing jetpack action from Boba Fett. That's just an obvious kind of complaint. It's just like, I know there's technically, you could say, nothing wrong with that in various areas, but I think there is something largely wrong with that when they could have used and utilized the jetpack in so many situations. Just have the guy hanging on a wire in front of a blue or green screen. You get what I'm saying? I don't understand. It just seems like the more you might critique Boba in this series, the more stuff that just kind of keeps coming out about the Boba. The Boba Fett. Do you know what I mean? It's not really the Boba Fett you would have come to expect to see in this series. And even, you know, Temuera Morrison has got some things to say about that. But anyway, moving on. Had a little bit of an issue with Mando just kind of taking a couple of hits and then just going down, like beckoned down onto one knee kind of thing. And it's just like in other shots or in other episodes of his own series, or just, it's just one of those contrived moments, because in other moments it doesn't happen. He can take like a billion blaster bolts to him, but occasionally here at Beskar one, I get it does hit him back, but here is a lot easier. I found some other moments while that, you know, it's just fresh on the top of my mind, like Chrysanthemum coming in, getting wounded. He was limping. He could barely move. He was getting shot. But then, like, when the droids started coming, which were pretty awesome, by the way, it's nice seeing, like, the shields again. It feels like I haven't seen that since the prequels. He was running. He was sprinting away. It's just... why are we forgetting that this guy can barely move? I felt like characters were making really silly decisions at points. Yet again, it was a bit of contrived writing. Like, even like if we're just skipping to the point of where Mando was about to get, you know, shot by the big ass droid, and right in front of the droid, as if it's one of those moments where it swaps to a shot of zooming into Mando's face, and it's just like, why aren't you moving? Why aren't you moving? Just moments like that, or even when he was on the floor, when the droid was like putting his pincers into him, he could have, I guess, ignited the jetpack and just slid back, you know, quite fast. Arguably, though, to be fair to the episode, after using the jetpack earlier, it might have run out of some fuel, but I don't know. In a comic, I do believe if Boba was on the floor and that was happening, he would have activated jetpack and he would have just, you know, you would have seen a panel of him like going back kind of thing. Probably the most gaping one, and these aren't stormtroopers, by the way, so we got shots of the literal droid going after those people running away who Boba and Mando were really trying to distract them from. And they were just shooting behind them every time. And look, again, I am very aware we get all kinds of different viewers on this channel, and you think, oh, that's not a big deal to me. But it is honestly really stupid. It makes it just look like, what is this droid doing? Like, all you have to do is aim a millimeter up, shoot in the middle of the crowd, and decimate all of them. Now, that's when I might get a comment saying, yeah, but Boba, if that happened, then, you know, all of those people would have been dead, and, you know, kind of game over, load save again. But no, just write it in a slightly different way. Don't show a really, really dumbass droid. You know, you get all these people running away, the crowd, and then you get the droid behind us going, pew, pew, pew. It's like, why aren't you shooting here? Like, you're seeing it on screen. You know what I mean? It's just things like that. I do think, look, you really expect me to find this cool? Like, this isn't cool. Overall, it was entertaining action, but I do have to say, just like the brief things I've pointed out, if you kind of pay a little bit of extra attention, there's a lot of convenient moments and things like that. It is quite flawed. It wasn't like the best put together thing, if I'm being honest. At face value, it seems like, oh, pew pew, oh, this looks awesome. But I argue that even though I still really enjoyed it, it wasn't the best executed thing. In between Grogu coming back, which, you know, it's needless to say, guys, absolutely adorable. Loved the moments when he used the Force. I do think, though, in situations with Mando, and this is kind of a common critique, which is very valid from fans, it's like, with him having literal plot armor, Baby Grogu always having such power to do a certain thing, and granted, it's not all the time. I do think, like, is there going to be much danger in the future? But regardless, it was awesome and adorable to see. It felt really good when he just kind of force jumped his way into Mando, and then, you know, he's like, I've missed you too, buddy, and things like that. It's priceless, and I can't wait to see their adventure continue in the Mando Season 3. Boba returning with a Rancor, I was just like, yes. I don't know what my passion is with Rancors, but I think it's just badass. And this was amazing. And that's when we got that moment with Cad Bane. Now, killing Cad Bane off, and, you know, I liked all the talk about your father, I knew you were a killer, and things like that, and Boba eventually did shove the staff and, you know, kill him. Some people were, like, saying to me, they're going to kill Cad Bane off. They just brought him in to kill him. Now, the only reason I see a somewhat okay aspect to this is that, as Boba did say, he's like an old man now. And you could argue it is somewhat the end of his story. But I do see how, on the frustrating side for fans, to just bring him into live action. And this is Cad Bane, right? A lot of people really revere this guy. Like, he's a very, very badass bounty hunter, and it's just now you brought him into the Book of Boba Fett to completely yeet him out of existence. And I do get it. It's just weird. I guess some people would have liked it if he would have somehow gone off in the universe, because he is a bounty hunter at the end of the day, and this is a job, so maybe if he admitted defeat, like, he would just been like, right, well, the Pikes aren't going to pay me, this is kind of over, and he could have been on his way. But killing him off, I do get how that kind of comes across as well. You brought in this legendary character to just kind of whip. Oh, that's how I am about it. I don't really know how to feel about it. A part of me thinks maybe it was his time, given the context and history between the characters as well. Him being an old man, it was like a finish to his story. Granted that we see him in live action for the first time right at the end of his story. And I get that, you know, it is still a relevant thing to tell. You can still tell the end here. But I get how some people might be like, oh, you brought in this legend to just kill him? This is when the Rancor's on the loose, Baby Yoda, and I really like how he has the ability to connect with other beings, like, well, animals and beasts, just kind of like Ezra could from Star Wars Rebels and other Force users, and this was adorable. He just went up to the Rancor, I mean, you guys have seen it, petted him, and then snuggled up to the Rancor's cheek. I mean, I've spoke about the maturity of Grogu to various people, because some people view it as every decade is like a year for Yoda's species or Grogu's species. But then it's just like, you know, if he's around 5 years old, maybe why can't he speak some words yet? I do think, like, he is still like technically a baby, toddlery Grogu of his species, so to speak, but I feel like there's a part of this species that maybe obviously operates differently, because it's a whole different species, where there is this kind of internal wisdom or kind of other thing going on there in his head that, albeit that he can't say words, in that moment you kind of see this thing to him where I feel like there's a bit more going on, where he can kind of understand certain things and situations that a toddler, just if it were a human, just wouldn't be competent or be able to do anything with. So I'd love to know your thoughts on that as well. And everyone was just staring here. So as I said in my last week's review, after the training with Luke, even though we technically didn't see anything massively different here other than him sending the Rancor to sleep than what we would have maybe have seen in the Mando, I do feel like this is a little sign to come of how, with a bit more training, we will be seeing even more impressive feats from Baby Grogu in the Mandalorian Season 3. And more or less, this is kind of a bit of an abrupt ending. We have the moment where the Pike guy and the mayor just got absolutely owned by Fennec Shand. Again, I can't help but just always sing her praises. She's just badass. Boba's walking throughout the streets. The people are all now loving him. I guess because, you know, you could argue beforehand they just didn't show that because, I don't know, he hadn't proved that he had, like, made the place better. But I don't know. Then he said, like, the people were relying on me. So this is what I mean. The whole, like, message there, or, like, motivation's a bit disjointed, if I'm being honest. And I just don't feel like they ever fleshed it out. And that was it. I did speak earlier. It'd be a shame if we just saw him only just get to be the daimyo and that's it, you know. It's like, oh. But I guess, as I said back then as well, we would see a continuation of it in Season 2, and you kind of have to think that's where they might be going. But I don't know, because you could see there might be a bit of an issue in that, because if they take some fan criticisms of Boba into account and change that in Season 2, it would be very jarring from Season 1. If they continue this on, I feel like some fans would be like, do we really need another Book of Boba Fett series? Because you could argue it was somewhat underwhelming to fan expectations. I don't blame fans for having certain expectations, because normally I say go in with no expectations, but when it came to this, it really subverted expectations for a lot of people with the way they've kind of handled this season. We got that cute moment with Mando and Grogu using the jump button, and I love how he's in the little port there. It's adorable, and I can't wait for all the little great moments they can use in Season 3 with that. And we got the post-credit scene with Cobb being alive. It didn't really feel much of a golden post-credit scene, if you ask me. That freaking modifying guy is going to be making more machine than man now to keep him alive, I guess. And I don't know, guys. So, like, you know, I know I've rambled quite a bit, but it felt like an entertaining finale, but not necessarily a good thing. You know, if I remove my bias from that entertainment, if I really got a bit more objective here, it wasn't that great. You know, there was a lot of entertainment there. A lot of my favorite characters of current day Star Wars there. Lots of cute moments and awesome destruction moments, but substance-wise and writing-wise and all that kind of stuff, was it really that good? I don't know if it was. And, you know, then you look at Boba, or the Book of Boba Fett as a whole, and you just think, you know, it depends what does it for you, really. If a lot of the action and the cute moments, Grogu moments, and badass moments with Rancor and stuff, like, ticks every box, and you think that was an awesome episode, then fair enough, that was an awesome episode. But when I also take into account these other moments, I just think, okay, entertaining, that was awesome technically, but when I take into it all under a little kind of, you know, bird's eye view. So that's it from the Book of Boba Fett from now. So I guess I would just love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Not only what you thought of this episode, but the series as a whole. Do you disagree with some of my points? Maybe for you, just the action and entertainment was enough to really blow you away. But when you peel back some of those layers, do you kind of maybe agree and see maybe what I was going on about? Do you just want to see more of this regardless? Do you hope that if they do continue it on, that they might change a little bit of the fan criticisms of certain aspects? But do you think, again, like I proposed, that might come across a bit too jarring, maybe a little bit too little too late? I don't know. But other than that, guys, go ahead and like this video. Do subscribe if you want to see more content like this and covering all kinds of other things on the channel. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, perhaps. Links, as always, are in the description and top pin comment down below. But thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you fellow Star Wars fans in the next video. Goodbye.